The Beast Mistress. The Whip's Crack. This is Khora, the Ensnarement Warframe. Khora's abilities focus largely on holding her enemies in place. Her ensnarement is second to few, and her ever-loyal companion means she is never alone. Khora's passive both is and revolves around her faithful Venari. Venari acts similarly to an exalted weapon, being moddable with companion mods. Venari will attack separate to Khora, just as any other companion would, and will always spawn at the beginning of a level. While Venari is active, Khora gains 15% movement speed, and Venari will respawn after 45 seconds if killed. One benefit as well is that Venari allows you to have both her and a second normal companion, enabling you to have both a pet and a sentinel. Whip Claw lets loose Khora's whip, striking enemies in a small radius from its endpoint. The whip deals impact, slash, and puncture damage evenly. The damage not only increases with ability strength, as all abilities do, but also with combo meter, which is built up for each successful strike. As a pseudo-exalted, Whip Claw is fully moddable. Utilizing her whip to capture an enemy, Ensnare binds an enemy in a wrapping, twisted spiral of metal. Enemies that walk too close will be entangled by a whip originating from the original target and dragged closer. Ensnared enemies will take double damage from both Whip Claw and Venari. Additionally, enemies will become unable to move for the duration, and additional enemies will become unable to act for 75% of the duration. The third ability Khora possesses is Venari. But Dusky, I hear you say, I thought you said Venari is Khora's passive ability. How can she be both her passive and her third ability? Well, random voice in my head. Venari is Khora's passive. However, Khora's ability, titled Venari, enables her to make better use of her Kavat. This ability allows Khora to cycle through 3 states for Venari: attack, defend, and heal. To change effects, simply hold down the ability button in order to swap from each stance. Attack will cause Venari to enter a normal offensive state. Venari will attack any enemy she chooses, and tapping the ability on an enemy will cause Venari to attack that enemy. The enemy ordered to be targeted will become linked with chains that hold them in place for 2.5 seconds. And deals 5 hits of slash damage with a guaranteed slash status. Protect will order Venari to protect Khora. Venari will use Tail Whip, causing enemies to be knocked down and disarmed every 3 seconds. Tapping the ability on an enemy will cause Venari to use Tail Whip on that enemy. Heal will give Venari the Revitalize ability. Revitalize will cause Venari to begin healing allies that fall below 90% of their maximum health, following the player with the lowest amount of health, and granting them 50 health regen per second. Khora can tap the ability button to cause Venari to follow a specific ally, until told to stop by casting again. While Venari has a lot of utility, you'll most likely stick to only one of these, depending on your playstyle. Supportive players will likely stick with the healing ability, while offensive players will likely stick to either her defensive or offensive style. Creating a massive trap to hold her enemies in the air, Strangle Dome will ragdoll all enemies that enter the area up to its limit. Enemies held by Strangle Dome will become unable to act and take friendly fire. This is described as their allies attempting to put them out of their misery. So that's fun! Additionally, they take impact, puncture, and slash damage over time, and twice as much damage from other sources. Striking with Whip Claw will cause the enemy struck to take full damage, and all other enemies held by Strangledome to take half its damage, allowing Whip Claw to strike multiple enemies at once for a reduced effect. You can cast Ensnare on an enemy held by Strangledome to hold even more enemies in place in the area, though they will not be being held by Strangledome. You can also cast multiple Strangledomes. I would also like to add that while Strangledome has little electric zapping animations, strangely, it does not deal electric damage. I feel cheated. Khora's abilities make her very useful for defensive objectives, such as interceptions. As well, her abilities like Ensnare can make it easier for her and her allies to strike groups of enemies at once, and deal with larger groups. At rank 30, Khora has 465 HP, 370 shields, 290 armor, and 190 energy. She has a Vazarin aura slot, along with 1 Matter Eye and 1 Naramon polarity. Along with this, she also has a Naramon Exilus slot. Khora Prime has an additional 96 shields, 55 armor, 35 energy, and an additional Vazarin polarity. Along with this, Venari Prime is stronger than base Venari. Khora and her parts can all be acquired from Sanctuary Onslaught, which can be performed at Cephalon Samaris at any relay after completion of the quest The New Strange. Her chassis from A rotations, her neuroptics from B, and her system and main blueprints from C. Now let's see Khora in action one last time. Ensnare your enemies like flies, Tenno, and swat them down in kind.